everyone, I'm PapaKenn and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Steven Universe. Just so you know, in case this looks a little bit strange or might even sound a little bit strange, I'm recording this episode on my brand new webcam, sort of giving it a little run for its money, testing it out on the Discovering series, seeing whether or not it might be a good alternative to my usual camera. So if you have any comments about the quality, please do let me know in the comments down below. But getting on to the topic of what we're going to be talking about today, the episode I'm going to be speaking of is episode 15 of Season 1 of Steven Universe, and that is called Onion Trade. And wow, was this a bizarre little episode! Now obviously, before I get into my overall thoughts, let's touch on some of my favorite parts of this episode. Starting with, honestly, my first thoughts were that the relationship of Amethyst and Pearl, as sort of shown in the opening scene and then a little bit more later on, seems to, well, I mean, it's the same overall in that, you know, Pearl is still very much the clean, wiser one, and Amethyst is the younger, more brash and sloppy one. But whereas in fairly recent episodes, it seemed like they were a bit more, what's the word, antagonistic toward each other, or just sort of like at each other's throats. It seems like their sort of little rivalry or disagreements have settled down a little bit, and it may be because of how they were able to form Opal. I don't know whether that's the cause or not, but it definitely seems like their spitefulness and anger toward each other is not nearly as severe as it once was. It's just it's sort of returned to a bit of an annoyance, you might say, or it's a lot more low-key. It may bubble up or boil to a head at some point in the future, but at this point it definitely just seems like they're a lot more at ease with each other than some of the recent episodes. But alright, moving on from there, my second favorite part of this episode was seeing Onion and his dad. Now, I actually have a question regarding this later, and kind of a theory, but Onion and his dad, just that little scene right there was kind of adorable in a way. And I don't know, it's one of those things where, because of sort of how far away from Onion we are, I don't know if maybe they were just mumbling and it couldn't be understood, or if maybe Onion and his dad speak a different language altogether. But I just thought it was funny that after they were together and his dad walked away, Steven made the comment that I guess they don't need words. So that raises a lot of questions for me, but at the same time, it was an adorable little scene, especially considering how adorable and fluffy bearded Onion's dad is. And then of course we find out that, well, near the end of the episode, that Onion really misses his dad. Apparently his dad goes, I can only assume, some lengthy times without coming home. Even when he hit shore and said, assumedly said hello to Onion that one time, it wasn't even 30 seconds later, I think, that he headed back out. And that seemed really strange. So, at the very least, at this point, before I get into my question and theory, it leads me to wonder what the relationship of Onion and his dad, and possibly even his mom, is. So yeah, I won't get into any more detail on that, or any more of my theorizing on that just yet, but again, I just found that to be a really cool moment, rather touching and sad at the same time. And moving on from there, my third and final favorite part of this episode is that Onion is just, in this episode at least, flat out terrifying. Like, even before he gets the duplicator wand, or whatever it was called, where he tosses ketchup packets, runs it over with his motorcycle, and then it crashes, and there's just fire everywhere. It creates this very anime-esque scene where, I mean, Onion is just I mean, creepy, slightly terrifying is about the only way I can think to really describe it. What's... Oh, there was another scene as well. I think it was actually just before... Oh, no, wait, it was right after that when Onion saw the duplicator wand, and just the look in his eyes, it was just this... From my perspective, it was this potentially evil, but just like very maniacal and psychotically obsessed view of his eyes. And then during the whole fight scene, just whereas Onion usually seems kind of, I guess you would say, blank-faced whenever he's doing other things, like he looked very determined and almost kind of sociopathic in my opinion. But looked a bit sociopathic when he was, aiming the wand and everything, and then just going at the crystal gems with the wand and its duplicating powers. I don't know, I'm curious whether this is maybe the only time something like this will happen with Onion, or if we might see more, and whether or not that will change my opinion of what kind of character he is. Because the way the episode ends is like, it's obvious that he had his reasons for doing what he did, but at the same time, it's... Yeah, I just don't know. I feel like I would just ramble on with that if I tried to explain it, but just overall, Onion is rather terrifying when he has the opportunity, seemingly. Now, okay, those are my overall favorite parts of this episode. Let me know if you have any others, or what your favorites might be, but let's move into my annoyances. And, first of all, my first annoyance is that Onion can just use crystal gem technology, or crystal gem weapons. Now, of course, in the past, anytime we've seen something being used as a weapon, I mean, the only real way to activate it, seemingly, or the only way to control it, was to be a crystal gem, or in Steven's case, a half crystal gem, half human. We haven't seen any evidence of a human being able to utilize a crystal gem power. Of course, as far as I know, this is the first time we've actually seen one of those in a human's hand, unless you count the laser light cannon from the second episode. Yeah, the second episode. But then again, like, Steven's dad didn't even really handle it at that point, other than just trying to load it up so they could tow it to where the crystal gems were. So, I'm curious whether or not that will lead to some future revelations, or some... Or maybe it's just possible for humans to use crystal gem weapons in general, even though they don't have magic, seemingly. I don't know, it's just a very strange thing that it is likely just the stupidest annoyance I might have with this episode, but just seems so out of place given the current context that I have. So if you have an issue with me finding that to be an annoyance, I'm sorry, but just as it stands, it just seems like such a weird thing that went for someone that's not magic, is not a crystal gem, to be able to utilize one of their weapons. But that's just me. Okay, now my second and final annoyance with this episode is that when the wand is smashed, everything that it has duplicated just poofs away. And the main reason why I have an issue with this, it fixed up the situation nice and quick as far as all the duplicated things that Onion had created, and all the havoc he had caused to an extent. And also Amethyst putting trash in Pearl's room, which was lame. But I mean, you kind of assume that those aren't the first things that the wand actually duplicated. So if it had been used on other things in the past, like, who knows how far in the past, would not the things that had been duplicated or created back then also have poofed away? And I don't know if that's something that they might come back to in the future, like maybe it is a plot point they might hit on someday in the future. But as it stands, it just, like, the thought of that just sort of bothers me too much to really be able to just accept. It's like, oh, okay, everything just poofed away, no big deal. So yeah, if they ever do follow up on that in the future, I mean, that annoyance will be gone. But in the meantime, it's just, I can't get that out of my head that something surely from the past might have been affected as well. But obviously, you know, these annoyances are just my opinion. If you have any other annoyances of your own, please do let me know in the comments down below. And, you know, obviously that goes for both positives and negatives, your favorite parts and your annoyances. Let me know in the comments down below, obviously. But moving on from there, I'm going to talk about my track of the episode. And obviously, since I don't know the names of the tracks, I'm just sort of making up my own names for them. But the music that was going on during Onion's attack was really, really good. And I'm finding a pattern that I think my favorite music for this show usually, not always, but usually occurs during action sequences. And just the music that they make for these sequences is just phenomenally done. They fit so perfectly. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but yeah, the music that plays during Onion's attack, I might put attack in quotes there, or air quotes at least, that's definitely the song of the episode for me. That's the song that, like, as soon as it starts up in the episode, it's just kind of like, and this is the moment it begins, and we start throwing all these little plastic things, and the cars, and all that. That sounded ridiculous. But alright, moving on from there. Or if you do know any of the names for the like different tracks and episodes, please do let me know. But were there any other little bits of music in this episode that particularly caught your caught your ear? Yeah, I guess that sounds better in this case. But alright, moving on from there. My quote of the episode was one that brought some just true nostalgia for me. And I didn't expect it all. I actually had to go back and double check whether or not he had actually said this. But after Onion has all the little plastic, what's the guy's name? Dave. After he duplicates all those and the city is just under a sea of plastic balls or plastic containers, Amethyst asks how you move through this, and Steven says, try and act like a rich duck. Which at first I was like, that's a weird explanation, but then it dawned on me, DuckTales. Uncle Scrooge in the show DuckTales had his money pit that he would swim through. So in order to swim through all that, you try and act like a rich duck. And that was just brilliant. That moment right there, especially once I realized what they were referencing, it honestly made me crack up. And I loved that reference, and that little bit of nostalgia just hit me right in the feels, yo. So yeah, that's definitely the quote of the episode for me. And of course, if you have any of your own, let me know. But moving on from there, it's time to get into my question of the episode and my theory, which obviously not every episode is going to have a question and a theory, or even one or the other in particular. But this one, actually, I guess that I could really just move the theory into just a question. Because the question I have written down is Onion a human? And then moving on from there, it's like my theory was that maybe Onion and his father aren't human. But again, take that back into just a question. Is like, you know, are Onion and his father humans? And I don't know, maybe me asking that in general is stupid or possibly even a bit insensitive, I don't know. But just because of like the visual style of both characters versus the rest of most people in the city, other than the crystal gems, of course. Just because of the difference in art style, and apparently just the mumbling or just incoherent method of being able to understand what they're saying. I don't know, part of me just leads me to believe that maybe they aren't human. Not crystal gems, but perhaps another life form, I don't know, that maybe came from outer space. I mean, that may sound stupid, but that's just the thought that came to mind for me, especially when it came to Onion being able to utilize the crystal gem technology. Now, again, if it's possible for humans to utilize crystal gem weapons, then, this completely washes away my thoughts on this. But if he, and possibly his dad, but if he isn't human, that maybe that is why he's able to figure out how to use it so quickly, how he's able to utilize it seemingly better than Steven. At least that's what's implied through this episode. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. And I don't know. I'm kind of. It's hard for me to decide whether or not I want anyone to actually reveal this for me. But if down the line there is something that is revealed about the origins of Onion and possibly his dad, don't mention it in the comments, because I would want to wait and find that out for myself. But if nothing is really revealed, feel free to say that. But yeah, it's something that was on my mind since the very moment I finished that episode. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but that is my question. It's like, are Onion and possibly his father even human, or could they be something else? And I guess I'll find out in the future, possibly. But okay, moving on from there, just my overall thoughts on the episode. It was pretty good. It wasn't the best episode by any means, but at the same time, I did kind of like it. I would say probably the absolute best part of the episode, for me, or like the best parts, other than just seeing the little interaction with Onion and his dad, has to be the action sequence at the end. That was really interesting, a lot of fun, especially seeing how the crystal gems were at least somewhat easily subdued by Onion, and it wasn't until Steven was able to sort of sneak up from behind doing his or act like a rich duck thing to knock down Onion that was able to be stopped. But just overall, the action sequence was by far the most memorable part of this episode for me. But other than that, it had maybe a few moments that caught my eye, but otherwise it was just kind of a episode. Not really one I think I would come back to, other than maybe to, I don't know, possibly in the future come back and theorize a bit about Onion and the random creepiness, kind of almost evilness. But alright, everyone, that's basically all my thoughts about this episode. Let me know what you think about this episode down in the comments down below, or on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever you want to. And next time we're going to be getting into episode 16 of season 1, and that will be Steven the Sword Fighter. And I don't know, based on the preview image that it showed by itself, it's we're going to see Pearl doing some sword fighting, apparently with a clone of her, seemingly. I don't know if that's going to be the overall deal with the episode or not, but I'm looking forward to it. It should be interesting, and should hopefully lead to some pretty cool action sequences, just again based off of my impression from the preview image on Hulu. But alright everyone, thank you very much for joining me for this episode of Discovering Steven Universe. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time on the next episode. And until then, Alonzi!